All right, guys, welcome back to the channel here at Live Life in Maine. I've been getting a lot of inquiries about should I buy land and build or should I buy an existing house? What are the benefits of doing either? What are some of the gotchas? What are some of the shortfalls? So I'm going to explore that in this episode. I got some property out there that's for sale right now, and one or two parcels is very different from another parcel that I have. So today, we're going to dive into one of the most exciting opportunities out there. That is buying land. Whether you're looking whether you're looking for a place to build a home, invest in, or have a homestead, maybe a farm, Maine offers some incredible opportunities. But before we go there are a few things you need to know to make sure you're getting the most value from your purchases. As they say, guys, not all land is equal. And in this episode, we're going to get into why that's the case. So let's get into it right now. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel here at Live Life in Maine. My name is Scott Tebow. I'm a realtor broker with eXp Realty. I've been doing this since 2013. Prior to that, I was in the IT industry. But more importantly than all that, guys, I'm a husband. I'm a father of 5, grandfather of 2, soon to be 3. I think our third is going to be here shortly, our first granddaughter. I'm a veteran, and I'm a son of Maine. I was born and raised here. That's what we call a maniac. I was born and raised here, lived here almost my whole life, other than right out of high school for about 10 years, where the majority of that I spent in the military. But I'm back, been back ever since. Love living up here. And this whole channel I built to help educate all those people that are looking to move to Maine or that are already here and are looking to sell or buy, some of the benefits of Maine and what it has to offer and how you go about some of those transactions that you're looking at. If you're going to buy, sell, invest, and today we're going to be talking about land. So if you find this information informative or it's going to help you during your daily process, whether you're looking to buy land or you just want to look at some of my other videos, then I would encourage you to subscribe, tap that bell to be the first to be notified when I drop new content, which is about a weekly basis, maybe a couple times a week. Summer's over. Today is actually the first day of fall. It's nice and cool out there. It's my favorite time of the year. We got pumpkin beer. We got apple crisp. We got apple picking. We got all those kind of fall activities. And it's my favorite time of the year, not to mention we got football on TV, although my beloved Raiders lost, but I did win my fantasy football league. So got to take the good with the bad. Glass is half full, not half empty, right? All right, guys, let's dive into buying or let's dive into what it takes to buy land versus if you're going to buy a house. So, as I said in my monologue, not all land is equal, and that is never more the case when you're looking at developed land versus raw land. So, what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to talk about what it takes to develop land to get to the point where it's shovel ready. So, you may hear the term shovel ready or a buildable lot. That means that whomever invested into the land, whether it's a seller, whether it's a developer, or whether it's you, it's all ready to go to have a house or whatever you're going to put on it done before you get those permits to build. But we're going to talk about what it takes to take raw land and get it to that situation so you can put something on that piece of property. And again, like I said, it's not all equal. So let's get into it. Let me get comfortable here in my chair. I got some cheat notes right here. Let's start out with, I'm gonna use my life as a experience of how this works. So some of the things that I go through on a day-to-day basis. So the other day I got a call from a company in Austin, Texas, and they have an option on a land that they found up here in Maine. They want to know if it's a good deal. And they wanted to hire me based upon the fact that I'm in the vicinity. They see that I've sold land before. They see my clientele. They see me on, they've seen my Google reviews and all that stuff. And they wanted to hire me. And I asked them, do you know what you're buying for land? And they said they had no idea. I was wondering if I could take a look at it. So of course I said, oh, sure, it's only, it's 20 minutes down the road. I'll go take a look at it and I'll get back to you. And this is one of the key things that you need to understand when you're buying land, and that is what are you buying, where it's located, and how you're going to get to it. So what I did in this example is I drove out to, oh, well, the first thing I did was when I went into the town where this land was being sold, and I looked at the map and the tax map of the seller that owned the land and to find out where it was. And it kind of looked like it was down a road. So I said, okay, cool, I'll go take a look at it. I drove out there, and the map and everything that I saw online was not what it showed on the computer screen. So I drove to this piece of property, or tried to drive to this piece of property, and I found out that you couldn't get to it because there was a landowner right in front of it. And when I drove to this kind of sketchy looking road at the end of it, I found that you couldn't go any further, and there were cameras that said no trespassing, do not proceed do not proceed any further, and there was a chain link fence across that part of the road. Now I didn't dive into it that much. I went into a little app. I use HuntStand actually. It's a pretty good app. It gives you property boundaries, at least up here in Maine. And I looked right online and I said, oh, there's this guy's property right in front of the land I'm trying to get to. So lesson number one, when you're trying to buy land or you're looking to buy land, is it accessible? In other words, can you drive to it? Can you get to that land either by a private road or a public road? The difference is a public road means a municipality or the township takes care of the road, plows it, makes sure it stays operational, repairs it if there's anything going on with the road during the years or a year. We get a lot of potholes in here in Maine as we get frost heaves that move up and down the road, and you get what is called potholes or frost heaves, and they can really wreak havoc on your car if you're going too fast. But whether it's public or private, if it's private, does it have a road maintenance agreement? Does it talk about how the road's maintained, who plows it, can like simple trash get picked up from there, where the utilities, yada, yada, yada. So can you access it is the first example of, do you want to buy land to build something on? That's the first thing I look at is it accessible? In this example, it wasn't accessible. I called back the company in Texas and I said, guys, I can see why this seller's trying to sell it to you and gave you an option to try to sell it, try to buy it and then resell it to somebody else, is because it's not accessible. And if you look further, which I did, I found that, and I looked at the deeds, there were no right-of-ways to the properties, and I looked at the deed to the abutters, and there are no right-of-ways to that property over those deeds as well. So that told me one of two things. Either the person that was selling the land really either inherited it or bought it years ago before there were abutters, or the abutter, specifically the main one I came across, I had the chain link fence and the cameras do not trespass, do not go any further. I think they're trying to squeeze out that seller, right? They know nobody can get to that land driving it, so perhaps they're just biding their time, for that landowner a lowball price on that land because they know nobody can get to it and they can pick up a bunch of land that way. So it told me that there was no accessibility to this land and it wasn't a good deal. The deal got, I told them I can't work with you and I wouldn't work with you. And they understood and they appreciated my time. But obviously there'll be other land that potentially is an opportunity. So the first thing is, can you get to the land? That's one of the first things I try to figure out. Is it accessible? All right, let's say you can get to the land and it is accessible via a vehicle. And the road is either maintained by a private road maintenance agreement or it's maintained by the municipality or the township or whatever you call it where you live. Here it's either municipalities or townships. Once you discover that the road is accessible, the next thing you got to understand is, does it meet zoning requirements? So you can find land out there that can be really cheap, but when you look at the zoning requirements that the municipality or township has, you realize you can't build anything on that land. And let me give you an example. So oftentimes when I find land, raw land, once I look to see if it's accessible, I go into the municipality's township code department office or look online to determine if the property is can be buildable by the zoning requirements. So typically, when you find zoning requirements, it determines how big a lot has to be or piece of land has to be. Number one. Number two, it determines what are the setbacks, right, to build this land. And number three, it determines after you get through the setbacks and is it buildable, how much of the land can you build on in terms of putting structure on it versus, how big the lot is. Generally, that number is around 30%. I've seen them lower, I've seen them higher. But you got to understand if the lot is even buildable, how much can you build on it, and does it meet the minimum requirement specs to even have a house on it. As an example, if you go 20 minutes up the road, there's land that I have for sale, but it's in a residential district, so you need 120,000 square feet to build on it. That's a little 2.75 acres, right? Other parts of municipalities and other land in other municipalities, you need a half acre. So it really depends how big the lot is and doesn't meet the zoning requirements, first of all. If it is big enough to meet the minimum requirement standards to build on it, then you got to understand the setbacks, right? How much road frontage do you have to have? How far off the street do you have to be, even if you have that road frontage? What are your side and rear setbacks? So once you have that understanding, and let's say we're still moving forward, it meets all the requirements, then we get into the next step, which is a survey. Has the land been surveyed? So understanding just because the seller says that the site or the property is big enough, and just because there's a tax map on it, and just because it's in the registry of deeds, believe it or not all that information may be accurate. The only way to determine how big the lot really is to have it surveyed, or has it been surveyed, and if it has, does the seller have those records that they can share with you? I've seen more times than I want to recall that the title, the setbacks, everything that a municipality had was wrong. And if the land was not surveyed accurately or was never surveyed, you could be buying something and you may not be able to build upon. So having a survey done, if the lot has not been surveyed, if it's raw land, is imperative to understanding how big the lot is, what you can build on, and what are the setbacks going to be once you determine the boundary lines of a survey. Now, along with having a survey, you're going to have to understand just because you have a piece of property, or you could potentially buy a piece of property, and it's been surveyed, and the property is big enough to build whatever you want to build on after you meet the zoning requirements of setbacks or whatnot, what it doesn't tell you is the property even buildable after you meet all those requirements? And there are two factors that really determine that. It's wetlands. How much of the land has wetlands on it, which means how much of the land can you build on without disturbing wetlands, or the topography of a land. Say that word 3 times. The topography of the land, right? Is it on the side of a mountain? Is it come to a peak? Does it have ledge? Does it have a lot of granite? Does it have a lot of rocks? Is the soil clay? Is the soil, dirt? Is it rocky? All those things are going to determine not only if you can build on it, but what you're going to have to do to build on it if any of those environmental factors take place on that land. So here's an example. I got 3 pieces of land for sale right now. 2 are in a subdivision that just got approved. 1 is raw land. The 2 that are in the subdivision are flat. They've had the road put in. They've had the utilities put in. They've had a survey done. They've had a wetland delineation done. They've had pretty much everything done so somebody can just buy the land, get a building permit, and start building a home there. And that is what we call shovel ready, or a buildable lot. Another piece of land that I have for sale is kind of more rural. It's on the side of kind of a little bit of mountain. It's up a private road that's not really well maintained, and it's going to take a lot to develop that piece of land. Now, obviously, the land that I'm having for sale in the subdivision is costing more than the raw land because in this case, the homeowner or the owner of this land who broke off a piece of his property and built 4 lots on it has already gone through the steps to make it shovel ready or buildable lot. But you got to understand the setbacks, you got to understand the survey boundaries, you got to understand wetland delineation. The other thing that you're going to have to understand if the parcel is big enough is, does it have vernal pools? So what happens here in Maine, and I can't speak to every other state in the country, but here in Maine, generally right around when spring starts kicking in after the winter, you get these what they're called vernal pools of water in the forest. And these pools of water, the little pools, they're called vernal pools, feed or quench the thirst of the local wildlife there. So many times you're not allowed to disturb the vernal pools, and you can only do this study in May. And if there's vernal pools along with wetlands, you're going to have a very hard time trying to make that part of the land buildable. Case in point, I've spoken about this gentleman before. I got a potential client. He lives in San Diego right now. He's in the military. He's looking to move to Maine. We're looking at a piece of property on Mount Desert Island up by Bar Harbor. It's a beautiful piece of property, and it's right situated right in the downtown where he'd want to be, a little bit outside downtown, but it's right in the middle of everything. The problem is the lot meets a certain requirements, but he can't build on the first like third of the lot because it's all wetlands. So he needs a road to go in to get to the back of the lot. Well, the problem with that is there's high power lines going up there from the local utility, and right now we're waiting on the utility in their legal department to determine. They've already agreed that a road can be put in because they have no way to access their poles either. But we're trying to figure out if they'll pay for that road because it's like something like 750 feet to get that road put in to get to the back of that property where he would need to build. I've seen prices, guys, where it's $100 a foot to build a road to $1,000 a foot to build a road. And I know that's a very big number, very big spread, but it just determines what you need to put into that road. Do you got to build it to the municipality's specifications in case they take it over down the road? Do you need to bring in a lot of fill if there's a lot of low ground and you need to bring it up to grade? Do you need to get a lot of stuff out of the way like ledge or trees or clear cutting or anything like that? I've seen where it can be as little as $100 if it's simple to as much as $1,000, and guys, a foot to build a road to give you access to whatever piece of the property you're looking to get to build a lot. So understanding wetlands, understanding vernal pools, understanding surveys, understanding setbacks, understanding the zoning, understanding the topography of the land, understanding the size of the structure you can build. As an example, right around the corner from me, there's a half-acre lot available. The requirements are you can't build more than 30% on that lot. So a quarter of an acre, and I say half acre, it's actually a quarter of an acre that's available. So there's 43,540 or 30, I can't remember the exact number. I think it's 540 square feet in an acre. So a quarter of that would be roughly, 10,000 something. So if you can only build on 10,000 something square footage of a lot at 30%, you can only build something that's 3,000 square feet in size, 30% of 10,000. But that's not just the house, that's any building structure, right? If you want to have a 3,000 square foot house, it's a good size house. But if you're going to build a 2,000 square foot house and then you're going to build a detached garage or something else, all that has to be encompassed into that size that you're allowed to build on, which in this case is just over 3,000 square feet. So those are the things you got to take into account when you're looking at buying raw land and developing it. Never mind the utilities getting to it, right? Are they overhead? Are they underground? You got to put them in. Doesn't the municipality require that you tie into their water if they have public water, or tie into their sewer if you have public sewer? Or do you got to drill a well and then have your own septic system? So that comes with its own challenges if you have to have its own septic system. a soil test should be done to determine if the soil is good and what needs to be put into the land to make the septic system work. Or if you got to drill your own well, right? How far do you got to drill down? Are you going to hit ledge? Are you going to hit bad water? Are you going to hit whatever? And then having a water test done to determine if the water is drinkable. And if it isn't, what type of water mitigation system are you going to put in to make it drinkable? All this is some of the stuff of why people shy away from buying land to build on. Now, developers and other people, such as myself and other investors, we've been through this a lot. We understand kind of those situations. So when we put an offer on a land, or a developer puts an offer on a land, we have a pretty long contingency period, so we can do that due diligence at our risk and our expense to understand if it makes sense to go down that road before we buy that land. These are all the things, guys, that you need to understand if you're going to buy raw land in Maine. I wish it was simple. It's not. There are quite a few hurdles you got to get through. You got to go in front of the planning boards or the town officers. Depends on where the land is. Determine if you can even do it. Determine if they'll allow it. Determine if there are certain requirements that they're going to want that you don't even know about yet, or I don't know about, or whomever you're working with doesn't know about it. You're going to have to talk to the code department. There's a lot of things you're going to have to manage. Never mind if you're buying raw land or buying land in general and you're not going to put a house on it. Even if you're going to put a house on it, most lenders, in my experience, it's not like buying a house where you already have the infrastructure in place. Raw land doesn't appreciate that much as with when you build it and put something on it. So typically I've seen 10-20% down in order to buy the land, right? And then the cost of the loan is a little bit more than if you're buying something that already has a structure on it. And guys, I'm not trying to get you to shy away from buying raw land or land and developing it. I think there are some really big and great opportunities to do that if you can find the right piece of land. Again, this isn't a plug for the land I'm selling. I got two lots. One's 3/4 of an acre, and one's just over half an acre. Actually, one's a little over 3/4, and one's a little over about 2/3 of an acre. They're like 3 miles from the beach. They're buildable, ready to go. Just need to pull a permit to get your construction going. Lots ready to go. They got everything they need. But those lots are a lot more expensive than the lot that I'm selling further inland. That's raw land. So there are those opportunities out there. They are I won't say far few between. Generally, if you're going to find lots that are developed, they've already lots that are buildable. They're usually in subdivisions, or the developer's already done it, and you're going to pay for what they want to build. Otherwise, you're just going to buy the type of house they're building and maybe make some adjustments to what they're offering. Sometimes there's some allowances that builders get, so you can change the color or something. But generally, the style of houses are the same. So understanding that buying land in Maine, and I got to believe it's probably everywhere in this country, it can be a complicated task unless you know who to work with. Now, you need to work with either a developer, right? But then you're going to pay those fees. You need to find a good realtor that understands a lot of this stuff. You could have a buddy, or the town, or somebody that does surveys and engineering. You could work with those guys too, right? They're going to help you if you have relationships with them. But regardless of what you do, don't go at it alone. You need to know these things before you get into buying land. It's one thing to put an offer on land and to get accepted. And if you do that, I would warn you and encourage you to make sure that you have a long enough contingency period to ensure that you can buy the land. Because once those contingency periods expire, if you haven't challenged it or got out of the purchase and sale, you're on the hook for that land, or at least for the earnest money deposit you've put down. And in some cases, the seller could sue you for negligence based upon the fact that you tied up that land for so long and never got through the process, and now he or she's going to put that land back up there. I haven't really seen that. I've seen people lose their earnest money deposits and the land being put up back out there. But you really got to understand and meet those requirements to doing the due diligence on what requires for the land. I got to tell you guys, some sellers, they have no idea. Like this one piece of property I brought on, I asked the seller where the pins were because it was surveyed. He has no idea. and I couldn't find one of the pins, so I've reached out to the engineering company to help see if they can help me find the pin. Of course, that they're not going to rush right out there and help you, so still waiting on that. But some sellers have no idea what they have. Some sellers have a pretty good understanding of what they have, and then you also got to understand the market, right? Um, if you have developable land, what's the price of that land versus what's the price of raw land if you don't have developable land? And some sellers, they go online and say this lot got sold for this lot got sold for that, this lot got sold for this. I should be able to sell this. When you're not talking apples to apples, right? There are developable lots or buildable lots or shovel ready lots versus your lot is not. So it's all about managing expectations and understanding when you're working with a seller what they have and what their expectations are, what it's going to be need to be developed, and are they willing to invest any of that money into that to make the lot more appealing, or are you going to request that the buyer bores all that expense and their risk? And if they do, it could work out great, but you're going to buy the land for less money, and the seller needs to understand that. So guys, there's a lot more here into buying land. Again, I could dive into 2-hour videos on some of my history and some of my examples and some of my lessons learned in the buying both raw land and developed land. But at the end of the day, this video is just to give you kind of some things to chew on and some things to think about. If you're going down that road, regardless if you're in Maine or another state, I implore you to find somebody who understands how this works. It can be, again, a realtor, somebody like me, or it can be an architectural firm, an engineering firm. It can be a developer. It can be a number of people that have done this before who can help guide you through that process. You're going to pay either way. You're either going to pay more for developed land that's shovel ready, buildable lot, or you're going to pay to have it done. Balancing what makes sense is the key, and making sure you have a team with you that understands how this works is imperative, so you don't lose your shirt, or so you don't buy land that you can't do anything with, and then what you got to do is try to resell it to the next person who may have a little bit more information than you do, or may say, you know what, they may be as naive as you were in the beginning, and therefore you're just passing the buck. I don't think it's the way to do business. But guys, that's my advice into buying land. I hope this video was helpful, guys. If you have any more questions, any more comments, please drop them in the section below. My phone number's there, my email's there. You can text me, call me, email me, get in touch with me however you want. I hope this was helpful. This video will be out in a couple days. If you have any questions, again, my information's down below. And other than that, guys, stay warm now, I guess. It's starting to get cooler. Here in Maine, anyways, the temperature in the nights are getting down to 40s and 50s, and pretty soon it's going to be 30s and 40s, and it's going to be freezing. But we're getting into the fall season. It's a great time to be here. The leaves are starting to change. All the colors are coming out. It's my favorite time of the year. So if you haven't never been to Maine, I'm not saying you're going to buy something. If you've never been to Maine, this would be one of the times to come, because it's just a beautiful place to go. And I met a couple from Wyoming the other day, and they want to know where they could go around. They're only up here for a few days, and I gave them some ideas, and they were very appreciative. But there's a lot of things to see in Maine in the fall time, especially with the colors and the leaves and all that. So it's one of the most beautiful states in the country to begin with the landscape and everything else that has to do with it. But it's a great time of the year. If you've never been here and you can get up here and just check out it, and just to visit, I would encourage you to do that. There's lots of things to see. Even if you're not looking to buy land, you just want to know, hey, where should I go if I'm going to come visit, and where am I going to be staying? Drop me a line. I'll answer that question. I had somebody call me not too long ago, I'd say probably 6 months ago. Hey, I'm coming to Maine, going to be visiting. Where do you recommend I go? Where do you recommend I stay? I'm going to be in and about this kind of area. And I called him and told him, and he was appreciative. Probably never get any business out of it. You never know. But, that's the purpose of this. It's not just about real estate. It's also about to help educate you in your process, whether you're looking to move here, buy here, sell here, invest here, or just looking to visit. Or if you're doing this in another state, just some things to think about if you haven't thought about those. From my perspective, a realtor who's been doing this now, I've actually been involved in real estate for over 20-something years. I just haven't been a realtor since 2013. I figured I'd stop paying realtors to sell the properties that I was developing, and I got my license, and it turned into much more than that now. But all right, guys, I'm babbling. Hope you guys are doing well, and if you have any questions, comments, let me know. Talk to you later. Scott Tebow, over and out. Bye bye.